Hello and welcome back to my YouTube account. James here as ever, but hello to anyone new visiting as well. I'm a qualified ACCA member from the UK and I specialise on this channel in helping ACCA students like yourself pass their upcoming examinations with guidance from my experience. So if you think that is going to help you, feel free to subscribe by touching the actual button above me here and you'll have access to all of my free resources and material. So today, and as everyone knows on my channel, it is 100% student-led, so dedicated to Sanjith out there, thank you for your comment. The thing is guys, if you want to actually put any comments below, I answer absolutely all of them and happy to do more videos on areas you're struggling with. So just let me know, that's all it is. For today's video, we're going to be going through the Financial Reporting External Examiners Report for 2019, the September and December sitting. I'm going to have all of my notes, but what I've done for you as well is in the description below, I put the links to the ACCA website where you can get the original documents as well. If this isn't actually your exam coming up, there are still going to be tips, tricks in there, and other areas that affect every single ACCA exam where students make mistakes. So feel free to actually apply the same techniques to your upcoming exam, and trust me, it'll help you in the long run. So I think we're going to get stuck in. Let's go. So guys, as you can see on my screen, plenty of notes to go through. But first of all, it is question number 32, where we've got the runner company and the jogger company, with the runner company being the parent and the jogger company being the subsidiary. That's one of the first steps within this question to identify in your group structure. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through each individual paragraph bit by bit. You're going to get my analysis, my advice going through, and then we'll review all the notes on there as well. The first point to actually get down is the actual number of minutes per mark. So the first bit on there is you have 180 minutes, give or take, with that 15 minutes of reading time that you can use as well. But for the 100 marks, it is 1.8 minutes per mark. So if you haven't got that written down in your revision notes when you start doing these questions to time, that is going to be fundamental in your practice before the exam. Make sure you get that down to start with. But overall, usually in these external examiners reports, it's always bad, James, that was terrible and all this sort of stuff. But if we look at a question, well, the actual first paragraph, the statement of financial position, according to this, was actually done rather well, where the performance on this part of the question was very good, and some students actually achieving full marks. But, this is the butter and the reason for the report, shall we say, there were some common errors to note. So, it's not always the case that everyone gets it all right. That is why we have these. This is why I do these videos, so you pick up on those extra marks that is going to get you over that finishing line of over 50. So pleasing from the marking team to see there was an increase in the amount of workings. Okay, if you haven't already, have a look at my actual question analysis of this as well. So I've gone through the whole question top to bottom. I'll put it in the description below, and it's also at the end of this video as well. So it's completely there for you, free. Go and use it, it'll help. But going on to this, no workings are shown in some areas. So as you're going through it, you need to be increasing the amount of workings that you show for the marker. This is even more critical if you're doing an online paper, because for me personally, I think that loads of students now are going to cut down on the amount of workings they're doing with an online paper versus if they were to do it pen and paper. So if you have an upcoming online test, make sure you get the right box to actually put it in where it is going to be marked as well. So common areas on this actual exam paper where students didn't put down enough workings were actually in the consolidation. So the external examiners pointed out the actual current liabilities. For me, I would say the unrealized profit and also the fair value was definitely another area. The more workings need to be shown, because if you just put down a figure to an actual requirement and that figure is wrong, you get 0 marks. But if you show me the process that you've actually gone through, especially from my marking experience that I see with students every year, it's called the own figure rule, where it pulls forward. Even if you get something wrong at the start, it will pull forward and you'll get the marks as you go through. So you may make a mistake at the start, but you'll get the marks on the second row, the third row and the fourth row with your answer and own figure carrying forward. So that's the critical thing from this question, and for future questions that you're attempting, show all of your workings for a consolidated statement of financial position and follow the answers through. My best advice there would be see what answers you've got, then see what answers they've got in the actual answer booklet, check out my notes and my talking through what was actually going on here, and then work out where you need to bridge that gap to actually improve going forward. Definitely something to do, especially on this type of paper as well, using the pro formas. But if you go actually into other aspects here in this paragraph, so if the candidate actually showed their workings, as you can see on here, the marker would continue to allocate those marks accordingly, the own figure rule. Final sentence on here. It is vital that candidates show all workings for their calculations made in the exam. You have been warned. Now, let's go on to the next paragraph on here. So, we actually had a deferred cash payment on this one, so discounting was required and an adjustment. So, the main thing here, best tip I can give you if you've got the financial reporting exam coming up, or advanced financial management as well, this comes in, and financial management, it comes into it. If you see a discounted amount, it would be 0.974 or 0.67 whatever, it's a case of that rings alarm bells to me and says I need to check the dates of this question, because what it's saying to me is something in the future is happening in this question and I need to bring that back to the present value. So that was the actual deferred cash payment. It was in the future by a year, so it needed to be deferred to bring it back to the present value. It's a real trigger within the question that if I see an actual discounted rate given to us, so I think it was 0.9 something here in the first paragraph, that tells me automatically there's a payment in the future I need to discount back to the present value. And as you can see on the format and the actual feedback from the markers, students did not subsequently unwind the discount at the reporting date, so bad on dates, and they didn't complete the double entry as to, well, what's going to be the difference between what's it worth in the future versus what is it worth now. Again, check out my answer analysis on this and you'll see everything step by step. The details are at the end as well. Next, coming on to the next paragraph, we have the fair value adjustment on here. So this was in regards to the property, plant and equipment. Again, the actual external examiner said, generally well done. So picking up on the number of years, and the fair value depreciation will affect the post-acquisition profits. So in other words, it's a case of, yes, picking up on the actual requirement, what it's asking for, the depreciation, the increase in value, but then you've got to know what to do with those figures. Do they affect the non-current assets? Where do we actually include that depreciation? Again, have a look through the question analysis on this, but show all your workings. That is going to be the main thing, especially on the financial reporting exam. The next adjustment on here, I use the actual term PERP, so the provision for unrealized profit, and adjusting for that unrealized profit. Now, if you've got a pen and paper, this is really important because it comes up year after year, paper after paper, and this is what is a markup and what is a margin. So we had the gross profit margin included in here, and there are different workings for each one. As you can see in the actual external examiner's report on here, mistaking the selling company as the parent company. So the next tip going away from this and for future question practices, you've got to ask yourself the question, is the parent selling to the subsidiary or is the subsidiary selling to the parent? And that is going to affect the calculation and where the figures go as well. Plus, is it a markup and is it a margin? So you've got a pen and paper with you, make sure you're getting that written down so that is one of your triggers as you go through it. And if we scroll down onto the final page on here, for the unrealized profit, the actual external examiner has deliberately written in here, should be practicing by candidates. So when I read this through and did my analysis, I even put down, heed the warning. Provision for unrealized profit calculations are going to be fundamental and key. You need to know that. So go through a couple of practice questions, I would say. Check out my past paper video that I've done for you on there. Get a list going for, here's a question where the subsidiary is sold to the parent, and here's another question where the parent is sold to the subsidiary, with a few bullet point notes below so that you know the process top to bottom, inside in, inside out, and you'll be fine. Trust me on it, and it will come up again. You can tell from the way it's written on here. Again, the actual provision for unrealized profit, it's an intra-group adjustment. What that means is, is there is a transaction within the group. So from Runner and Jogger Company, because one owns the other, they are combined in a group, they are trading between each other. So it's an intra-group transaction. That's the key word to define there. The next aspect we had on here is errors in the workings. Okay, so it's a very odd comment on here about proportionate consolidation. So some students actually added the 100% of the parent's assets and liabilities, as it states on here, to the group share of the subsidiaries and assets. So there's some double counting and some fundamental errors on there. So just check that you're going through and actually applying the correct techniques, following the correct working step by step going through, and the pro forma for the overall statement of financial position as well. That's just fundamental bread and butter for you going through this, and it comes with practice as you go through. But it appears that there are a couple of providers out there potentially that are actually going on a different standard. So make sure you review past papers are going to be key here, so that your format that you're working on matches the standards of the exam as well. That is really key and critical. Coming on to part B now as well. This is where you've got to answer and attempt all of the actual requirements. So just coming to the bottom on here, the final line, and an external examiner will always put this in as the final line because it's going to be the last thing you remember, is disappointingly a large number of candidates fail to attempt this part of the question at all. So in other words, imagine there was a bin at the front of the exam hall, you might as well just throw the marks in there because you're not getting them. Okay, this comes down to time management. So those 1.8 minutes per mark, okay, you've got to be really strict on it. There's always going to be time at the end. I always used to leave myself 5 or 10 minutes at the end to just go back, write down any other key points, but I'd rather get down at least a few sentences than absolutely nothing at all, because a blank piece of paper for part B, I'm afraid, is 0. So poor time management comes into it. So make sure you're on top of that and get yourself a watch as well. As you can see on here, I've highlighted for you on here the IAS 28, investments in associates and joint ventures. There are key words on this now as well. Identifying it was an associate. There were also issues ignoring the requirement to explain it as well. So actually, what did the requirement ask from you? Understanding what is going on here. The key term to actually get down is significant influence. Anything to do with subsidiaries and joint ventures. Does the parent have significant influence? And this also relates into, well, does the equity method actually apply on this? These are the little checks that you should be asking yourself if a scenario came up where, are we actually buying another company? What percentage are we owning? Do we have significant influence? And what method are we applying to actually account for this as well? So attempting all of the aspects on here, and finally quote the standard as well in a discursive question. If you can quote the standard, you're going to be that bit ahead of other students who don't even reference it as well. Some standards come up more than usual, but if you're having to do a group reporting account for financial reporting, I'd say there's a pretty good chance that you can mention IAS 28, investments in associates and joint ventures. So definitely one I would be having on a little bullet point just before the exam, so that it's in your head and it's going to be focused in there as well. Try to think about 28 in terms of something as well. Maybe you can name 28 companies or something on those lines. I don't know. Something that's going to remember it for you as well. And as I stated as well, poor time management. It happens to every single ACCA student. This comes down to doing the exam under conditions, no phone, lock yourself in your room, just pen and paper or computer screen, Excel, depending if you're doing the exam online or face-to-face. It depends where you are in the world. But that is going to be fundamental that you understand the time frame. And if your phone is out of the room, practicing at home, it's out of sight and out of mind, so you're going to be better focused. And trust me, the rewards are going to be massive for you. So that was a lot of detail going into loads of actual points there, which I know are definitely going to help your upcoming examination. What I've also done for you at the end of this video is I've linked it to the whole question analysis. So I'd highly recommend checking out that question analysis and then putting it with the external examiner's report, and you're going to be well set on your way in terms of revision. If you found today's video helpful, feel free to like and put a comment below as well. I really appreciate it. And also feel free to subscribe so you get access to all of my free materials. As always, best of luck with your upcoming exam. And as always on that bombshell, I'll see you next time. Cheers.